Good morning. I'm talking to you this morning from my laboratory in the highland rainforest of Panama. Our nearest stoplight is 40 miles away. Our town has no street names or house numbers. However, we do have gigabit fiber to the home internet and Amazon 3-day delivery from Miami. Countries like Panama are simply bypassing the old industrial development models and going straight to the information age. So today I'll talk about how the information revolution, combined with thermodynamics, is creating a new global real-time human mind and the vast new opportunities for the evolution of the human race that this presents. So right now today, the two most valuable companies in the world are Apple, an information company, and Saudi Aramco, an oil company. And the top 5 most valuable companies are Apple, Aramco, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. Obviously, information is where investors are placing their bets on the future. So let's look at the future they're betting on. In 1995, the internet had 16 million users. By 2007, the year the iPhone was released, it had grown to 1.3 billion. Today, only 15 years later, the internet has grown to 5.3 billion people, 67% of the total global population. And every year, it's growing by around 300 million new users. And 98% of them access the internet via smartphone, in addition to regular computers, of course, but everyone has a smartphone. In North America and Europe, penetration is already more than 90%, and in some countries, 98%. China has the largest internet population at around 1 billion, and India has around 700 million, but they're still ramping up with only about half of their citizens online. And we haven't even talked about Africa. Today, Facebook counts 3 billion users, and it grew by 1 billion in just the last 5 years. It's adding more than 500,000 new users every day. 36% of the global population accesses Facebook every month. God help us all. For its part, Google racks up 90 billion site visits, 2 million per minute, which sounds like a lot until you realize that WhatsApp is turning out 42 billion messages every minute. And the average internet user spends more than 3 hours per day online. Times 67% of the global population, that's about 20 billion hours per day. Meanwhile, back at the Industrial Revolution, the evolutionary curve is flattening out. Competition is making energy and resources more expensive and harder to get, and in developed countries, no more airports, highways, or train systems are being built. Yet more people than ever are trying to travel. And global air travel just invites instant pandemics, as we've seen. So the ultimate limits on industrial expansion turn out not to be energy, but turn out to be physical space. So in order to understand the intersection of information and thermodynamics, let's start with a working definition of what life is and how it operates. The theory of constructal infonomics states that all life forms invest knowledge in order to harvest and store energy from the environment. To persist, all life forms must invest some of their reserve energy to grow, reproduce, and evolve. Growth, reproduction, and evolution all require energy reserves over and above just what it takes to run their internal operating system. But survival is an uncertain business. There's competition for resources, there's predators, there's natural disasters, and of course, evolutionary missteps. They're all inevitable and unpredictable, which means that the imperative for survival is to harvest and store as much energy as fast as possible. The operation of this thesis rests on Alan Turing's proof of computability discovered in 1938 and widely known as the Turing machine. In short, Turing answered a long-standing question in mathematics by proving that any algorithm that could be described could be computed by a machine, and how to design such a machine. What he discovered is in reality a universal principle for all information machines, whatever their mechanism of operation. So combining Turing's proof with the constructal law led me to the theory of constructal infonomics, which demonstrates that the algorithms that animate biological life can be executed in any thermodynamic mechanism, biological, mechanical, computer, or extended organisms. Extended organisms originated in biology with sexual reproduction. Two different organisms must communicate and cooperate in some manner over a distance to reproduce. Thus, the definition of the species is, for example, not just a man or a woman, but both of them, and the unique communication channels that connect them. Without communication, there is no reproduction. And in fact, the human race's progress is intimately tied to our unique abilities to communicate via language, to plan, to imitate, and cooperate in groups large and small. Human families thus became tribes, then city-states, then religions, nation-states, companies, clubs, and more, all of which are extended organisms. The members of an extended organism are not physically connected like the cells in our body, but they belong to a connected information network with shared objectives. The definition of life, then, is not about what it's made of, but how it behaves. Once again, harvest and store energy, survive, grow, reproduce, and evolve. It's fascinating to note that the three most used internet sites in the world perfectly reflect our imperatives. Google, the most visited web service on the planet, is dedicated to growing our information base and speeding access to it. YouTube is the second most popular site. If you want to do things in the thermodynamic world, you must have knowledge of how you're going to do it. Need to change the battery in your smartphone or do surgery on your goldfish? Go to YouTube and in 2 seconds you have 10 videos showing you how. Our information systems are now working at the speed of mind. As fast as you can think of something to do, you can find out how to do it. To say the least, the global mind accelerates our ability to do more, faster, and better in the thermodynamic world. Facebook is the third most popular site on Earth, but I generalize it to include all social media. These are our platforms for evolving our human relationships and social organization, and they're building a shared base of creativity and inspiration. So, grow, reproduce, and evolve. Our global mind is operating just like every other living organism that exists. Okay, so let's take a minute to see how the relationship between information and thermodynamics played out over history to get us where we are today. At the end of the last glacial cycle, about 12,000 years ago, the climate warmed and humans quickly learned how to use agriculture to reproduce and grow the population of the human race. Constructal flows converged to form city-states as the dominant organizing principle. The evolution, however, of information and knowledge was slow to develop and spread, being limited but to word of mouth, religious dogma, and hand-copied manuscripts. After thousands of years, the printing press finally arrived, first in China around 1000 AD, and 400 years later in Germany, invented by Johannes Gutenberg. Printed manuscripts could now be replicated widely. This provided the information substrate of accurate plans, which enabled the scientific method and the Industrial Revolution. By the 1850s, James Watt famously got rich by incorporating the ball governor into his steam engines, which was in fact a primitive computer, whose plans were published 300 years earlier by the great Dutch citizen scientist Christian Huygens. So the printing press speeded replication of knowledge. However, the creation of the original knowledge stored in the books was, and largely still is, laboriously hand-assembled by authors. And once published, books are static and unchangeable. By 1995, the advent of the computer and the internet introduced the ability to gather update, and distribute information in real time, along with the ability to modify information algorithmically, distilling it into knowledge and distributing it as needed without physical human labor. For me personally, 2007 marks the birth of the true information revolution. The introduction of the iPhone in 2007 and all the smartphones that followed has created the fastest, most pervasive social transformation in human history. We can now think, learn, and do globally in real time on a person-to-person basis. I call this the global human mind. And the smartphone we carry around today gives us instant access to more information than even the richest person, company, or government only 20 years ago. And today, that power is in the hands of virtually every person connected to the internet. At this moment, 67% of all humans on the planet. The collective potential intelligence and capabilities of the human race has just been multiplied by orders of magnitude and is increasing at the Moore's Law rate of doubling every 18 months. Well, that's great, but how does it help us with all of our legacy Industrial Revolution issues? I submit that the information revolution is blasting us past the limits of the Industrial Revolution. Industry is already becoming more compact, more efficient, and less intrusive. Less is more. The Industrial Revolution put us in $40,000, 4,000-pound gasoline burners just for trips to the grocery store or commuting to an office so we can talk on the phone and do email. And in $100 million airplanes for a trip to visit Aunt Millie in Topeka. Well, why bother? We pick up our smartphone and instantly visit with Aunt Millie anytime we want, for as long as we want, wherever in the world she happens to be. The COVID pandemic has been effective at breaking our office addiction. And while we think we cherish the touchy-feely aspect of human contact, I think in many cases it's way overrated when you consider the resources necessary to make it happen, especially in artificial environments like offices. Next, and this is important, the global human mind is creating vast new ways of harvesting energy to create wealth. Ideas move orders of magnitude faster from concept to reality and result in far better products being created. New products can be instantly introduced to global markets. On average, every dollar invested in Google advertising makes $8 for the advertiser. The Starlink satellite internet system, and its competitors that are on the way, is creating billions in new wealth globally by increasing the value of internet remote properties. And I bet all of you know about some of those. Internet access for unserved markets is great, but Starlink can create even more wealth just by reducing the latency of transatlantic internet connections from 45 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds because the speed of light is faster in a vacuum than in a fiber optic. And who profits? High-speed stock traders. Then there's the Internet of Things, which is growing 50 times faster than the human user base. It's already well over 200 billion devices, and nobody really knows for sure. All those security cameras, smart toothbrushes, Alexas, Siris, and more sensors on more things than anyone can count. What's the long-term value of IoT? For example, when cars can communicate their precise position to the cars around them, self-driving cars will become orders of magnitude safer and more desirable. On the flip side, I'm often afraid that Minority Report was actually a documentary. We seem to be moving strongly in that direction, especially as the epidemic of mass killings devours the United States from the inside. And AI is already making a growing contribution to our global human mind. It's such a large and controversial topic that I'll just mention it in passing today, because I want to talk about how the global mind is also changing geopolitics. Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, TikTok, etc. each have billions of global users and customers and suppliers and employees. They have more than all the largest countries. And the loyalties of their global citizens, both businesses and people, is no longer rooted in physical location or loyalty to a particular country. Because of this, the power of nation states that are limited to only providing benefits to citizens within their own borders is fading rapidly. How long do you really think it'll be before Amazon gets together with some global insurance and healthcare providers and offers global health insurance with globally networked services. Pulling the plug on national health care and the taxes they generate is one more nail in the coffin of the nation-state governments. But what will the information revolution produce to supersede nation-states? Well, the internet was designed by Tim Berners-Lee and DARPA to be a network that would survive a nuclear attack. When one part is knocked out, information routes around the damaged parts and the network survives. With our new global human mind, economic and geopolitical functions are now taking on the resilient characteristics of the network itself. When Russia invaded Ukraine, for the first time ever, some 400 global corporations from many countries, without any government asking, voluntarily pulled out of Russia. This is a clear sign that the disruption of the global supply chains and economic order is not appreciated by powerful global corporations. The COVID pandemic and the unfortunate current events in Ukraine are the first real large-scale tests of how the global mind deals with major disruptions. What's amazing to watch is how rapidly the disrupted energy flows are being reorganized into new channels. And just like a river system, once the new channels have evolved, they never return to their old configuration. Today, every problem is a global problem. Mr. Putin, are you paying attention? Some people say we have too many people on this earth. I disagree. Our global human mind has a capacity not only to feed, but to celebrate and nurture the unique abilities of the widest possible diversity of human beings, and the more minds, the better. And inspiration is the fuel that drives humanity. User-created content is rising rapidly as a percentage of all the information on the internet. From this vast and expanding base of creativity, the best ideas are bubbling up to the top of the pyramid and becoming part of our collective global cultural resources. And we need art. As I argued in another paper on the constructal law, art is the way we evolve our minds to grasp new ideas. Every human society, from as far back as we know, has created art. It's an essential tool for our ongoing evolution. And with our new global mind, we're already seeing, and will see much more, the greatest flowering of artistic expression in human history. So to wrap things up, our global real-time information world is now operating at the speed of mind. We can communicate, learn, teach, and do things in the real world at very near the speed of human thought on a global basis. Our knowledge of the world and our ability to use that knowledge to master new thermodynamic processes of all kinds is exploding faster than we can even comprehend. We're challenged to think beyond the borders of who we are, where we live, what we've learned in the past, and what we're capable of creating in the future. How will we relate to and benefit from our new global communities and organizations? And how do we, all 8 billion of us, profit from this evolving new world? I often think metaphorically of human society as living in a cave. It's warm and safe inside the cave. But at the mouth of the cave, the bright light, the opportunity and danger of the outside world. There's lions and tigers and all kinds of things out there. Some invent new tools and methods and venture boldly into the light, often returning with riches beyond measure. Others shy from the light and drift deeper into the dark of the cave. Their view and understanding of the evolving world narrows and shrinks until they become irrelevant and disappear. So always walk fearlessly toward the light and dream bigger than you dare. Let me leave you with the words of Steve Jobs from 1997. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and square holes, the ones who see things differently. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. So thank you, Professor Bajan, for being crazy enough to bring sunlight to the constructal law and its many ramifications. You've changed the world and are helping all of us to also change the world. And we thank you very much. And I thank you for your kind attention.